just constantly be perfecting and working on your craft of being a social media manager, I think is important, because it's constantly changing. What worked one day is not going to work tomorrow. What worked on this account is not going to work on the next one. And understanding that constantly working to hone your craft is key to staying in this and being successful in the business.
Welcome to What Gets Measured, a NinjaCat podcast about marketing, performance management, metrics, and effectiveness. Because what gets measured gets managed. I'm your host, Jake Sanders. Jon-Stephen Stansel is a social media manager professional with almost a decade of experience managing and creating content for higher education, small business, and government social media accounts. He's worked for the University of Central Arkansas, Texas State University, the Texas Department of Transportation. He co-hosts the Thought Feeder podcast. He's got a bachelor in radio and television production, and he's here today to talk about managing social media analytics. John, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for showing up, man. Well, so let's just dive in. Let's start with an overview of social media as a vehicle for marketing. What do you think the historical approach to social media has been for marketers, and where do you see this all headed into the future?
Oh, well, I've been working professionally in social media since it was a thing that you could do. And I'm hoping, and we still see it, that it's no longer seen as a novelty. We've finally hit this age where it's like, okay, we have to be on social. We have to be doing something. But I still don't think as you move up the ladder, everybody understands the magnitude of its importance yet. Yeah. I think things are getting better in that regard, and more people are recognizing its importance. But I don't think we have ever reached that point where we understand, oh, hey, we need to be investing a lot of money into this, and we need to hire more than one social media manager, possibly. And actually have a team. We're seeing it more and more. Bigger corporations are understanding that, and even some smaller ones are. But by and large, your average social media manager out there working the 9 to 5 is a team of one, and not generally getting the resources that they need for as much as they're doing for the companies they work for. So yeah. I'm hoping in the next several years we get past that, but I've been hoping that for a while now.
No, I mean, you are amazing on social media. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I reached out to you, because you have a humorous take on it, and you ask kind of inspiring questions. Like, people think that a social media manager needs to also be an analyst, a creative, do copywriting, do video editing, producing, podcast stuff, like they can handle it all. Why do you think social media managers have, along with all the other marketing roles, why particularly do you think social media managers are getting heaped with all these things?
Because social media is so many things, and I don't think there is a clear definition of what a social media manager does, nor I'm not really sure there needs to be, because there's so many different types of social media managers.
Right.
Just with every platform, and as platforms are growing, Twitter used to be so simple, right? You couldn't even post photos. It was just it was 140 characters of text, and that was it. And now we're seeing platforms really broaden their scope and expand. Instagram has introduced video years ago, but now we've got reels and all of these tiny little stories, different methods of communication just within one social platform. So I think the role of social media manager hasn't really grown with it. It's just, okay, oh, all right, well, Instagram's got video now. I guess you're doing video too. And it's kind of death by a thousand cuts for social media managers of what they need to do.
Yeah.
And I think brands need to focus and every so often pause and go, okay, is what we're doing working?
Right.
Do we need to be in all of these places? And do we need to hire somebody else to focus on that? Because the skills of a social media manager that's really good on Twitter doesn't necessarily translate to TikTok, and vice versa. I know I've seen social media managers that are amazing on TikTok, and then you get on Twitter and it's like, oh, you don't know what you're doing, do you?
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a totally different skill set. And I think we need to recognize that and hire accordingly when we're hiring social media managers, and reevaluate what they're doing as they move forward.
And that leads brilliantly into the next question of analytics, of proving the work. How do you approach metrics and reporting, and what do you think most brands and marketers miss when it comes to measuring impact on social?
And there's another job right there, like measuring the impact on you've got a creator role, and then you're asking them, well, okay, well, prove the value of this creation, right? So, the skill set of somebody who makes a great video are just as really meme savvy, right?
Right.
Doesn't always translate to that numbers game. So sometimes social media managers aren't that great at translating that, and sometimes they're really good at doing that and not the creation part.
Right.
For me, however, though, with the analytics, I'm not a numbers person until I learned that numbers could tell a story. Then that got me like, okay, well, we can use this data to tell a story and share what is happening on social. I had a tweet the other day talking about kind of all analytics are important,
Yeah.
because we've gotten. I think there's a bit of a backlash. For a while, it was follower count. How many followers can we get? How fast can we grow? How many people can we get seeing this, interacting with this piece of content? And I think there was a lot of pushback going, hey, we want quality followers, not just numbers. The game can be kind of juked. The stats can be misleading on that. So there was a kind of a pushback like, okay, these are vanity metrics. Don't pay attention to followers. But I think we need to reevaluate some of that and go, hey, look, all of these data points combined help us tell a story. Maybe this account has a lot of followers and it's not getting high engagement, or they don't have any followers that are getting, heaps of engagement, or this video is getting a certain number of views, but they drop out at a certain point. All of these things help tell that story. And when you eliminate one factor, like I want all the data, just give me everything, just, and then let me parse through it and evaluate that. And that in its own is a skill that needs to be developed, and a lot of social media managers need to have, or you need to have a data team on top of your content creation team. Now, that's not easily available to every single business. There are a lot of mom and pop business, local coffee shops and what have you, that are trying to push their businesses on social media and can't do that. But you've a social media manager needs to have a little bit of everything, just so they can jump in and understand those things. But yeah, we've got to be measuring and looking at the entire, look at data holistically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and so for you, does it come down to a certain thing, like a certain set of metrics that you need to grab onto, or is there something that like, how do you approach that story? Is it just taking all of these things and saying your business goals were these things?
I'm glad you said the word goals, because it all starts with goals, right? If your goal is to get people to hit that buy button, that's going to be the metric that determines your success. But then there are more vague goals, like, you get, we've got to get the word out as a goal. What does that mean? And how are we going to measure our success in that goal? And those things need to be predetermined before the campaign starts. Like, okay, what is our goal and how are we going to measure it?
Yeah.
And then all of those data points, you take a look at them, and you kind of need to determine that story from there.
Yeah.
You might find something that surprises you. Like, and if you're ignoring one metric, you might miss that little touch point that goes, oh, wait a second, this is interesting. Why is this happening? Or why did this happen when we posted on this date and not the other? So you also have to, you need to predetermine what goals you're going to evaluate for success, but also leave it open for that interpretation and those surprises, because you're going to learn something.
I love that. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you do have to be tightly focused, strategic, but then also have a little bit of grace, because there might be something that you see in certain, aspects of people engaging with social media that could, lead to maybe establishing a new goal, or saying, like, we started this as a conversion campaign, but it seems like it's really doing brand awareness work, or vice versa. And that leads again brilliantly. Who wrote these questions? About social listening. I think a lot of marketers and businesses tend to see social media as a one-way vehicle. Like, I'm just talking at people, and then I'm gonna figure out what the effect of that was. What are your thoughts in regards to social impact, you know, that can inform the marketing strategy, like social listening, those kind of things? Like,
Social listening is like I'm a giant social listening fan because I think it is the most valuable tool in in a social media's toolbox.
okay,
Because there's so much out there of what people are saying about your brand, or not just about your brand, your field in general, what they're interested in, what they want to hear from you, and you have all of that at your fingertips. It's easily accessible for the most part. As
right,
there are platforms like Facebook that are a little bit more closed, but Twitter is very open,
right.
Instagram to an extent, and paying attention to what your audience wants and what they want to hear from you, and finding those little surprises. You just never know. I got my start in higher ed, but now I work in the entertainment industry, working
Hmm,
on television and film,
awesome.
and will be really, you might be surprised when, okay, we've released the series and there's a character that we did not think we didn't feature much in the marketing, but the fans just love that we've got this high volume rate talking about one certain character. And that tells us, okay, hey, we need to ramp up some marketing featuring this character, and we would not know that without social listening. And it's something that until social media, the entertainment industry really didn't have access to before. And fans really have a voice now, good or bad. Sometimes it's not that great, but there are toxic fandoms and what have you. But
Right.
being aware of even those listening to, okay, these are those pain points that we need to be kind of mindful of, that we might get pushback, or we're going to do anyway because we know it's the right thing to do, but
Mhm.
just brace ourselves, like, okay, clear your schedule for the rest of the day because there's going to be some some mean comments. But
Right.
that social listening is just incredible. And then for me, it's you kind of get that broad audience and understanding, like what people are saying about, in my case, like uh a film, or a television show, or a comic book. But you also get the one-on-one perspective, which I really love, is when you use social listening, you find, like, and you can reply from the brand account, like, to that one person who, oh man, this one part of the show really struck me, or my kid loved this, and you can reply to that and just make somebody's day. To me, that's just awesome. You can't put a dollar value on that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like you mentioned toxic fandoms. Most people would say don't engage with the trolls, or only engage with the hyper fans. Like, oh, my niece and I will watch the show, or a brother of mine loves this product or something like that. Then they'll respond, but they'll leave the toxic stuff away. I mean, how do you approach interfacing or engaging with negative commentary, on social
And
media?
this is where having an experienced social media manager helps, because I hate to say I don't really have a solid answer for that. Some of it is just gut feel of, I've been through a lot. I've seen some rough stuff online, and
Right.
as a social media manager, dealt with it.
Right.
I mentioned my work, it was started in higher ed. My very first day of my first full-time social management job, I was working at Texas State University. My boss gave me the password, said, all right, you're running the ship. 30 minutes later, I get a phone call from the chief of the police saying there's possible gunshots fired on campus. It's my day one. Thankfully, it was a truck backfiring, but there was about 30 minutes where we just weren't sure.
Wow.
And then just dealing with, like, okay, well, what is our crisis communication plan? And in a crisis like that, it's terrible, but you do have, like, a prime directive. Okay, this is what we need to do, X, Y, and Z. This is how we need to respond. When it's a PR crisis, it changes entirely, because it's like, well, okay, we enter, like, ethically, finance. What do we do here? What mess? And a lot of times that's above a social media manager's pay grade, but we
Right.
can advise the powers that be. Okay, this is what people are saying. This is what we think we need to say. Take it or leave it, and then we kind of deal with the consequences of whatever actually goes out. So, it really kind of comes down to like that experience of knowing, okay, this is something, I had at one time had like an actual flow chart of when to respond to a troll, of like, okay, is this something that we can help with? Are they a professional troll? Like, look at their profile and see like,
Right.
what they're doing. And because a lot of it, and I've said this before, is just because someone's negative about your brand doesn't make them a troll or a hater. It's that they care about your brand and they don't know how else to help. Like, they see you doing something that they disagree with. They still like your brand, but they want to see it do better.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the ones you want to respond to and listen to. And sometimes it's just they just want to be heard and acknowledged.
Right.
And it just, I hate to say, like, it's kind of a cop out answer, but it just kind
No.
of takes some time and experience in dealing with it to know when to engage and when not to.
Right. And it depends is a fine answer. I think people should be more comfortable with context, describing what you're supposed to be putting out as far as content's concerned. But you brought up something interesting and it got my brain like, what was it? Arby's or Wendy's? Like Wendy's just burning fools, like just going on their social media and just lighting everyone up and being snarky and, that kind of has passed. I don't necessarily see that as much, but there was a burn war kind of social media approach. What were you thinking during that time, and what do you think as far as tone of voice is concerned in social media? Like how do you kind of approach that?
Well, with Wendy's, I think is a special case. Like,
Right.
they did it really well, and they did it in a way that it was snarky, but it wasn't mean. And there was a bit of, I think every social media manager, there's like the tweet heard around the world when like Wendy's first started clapping back. And I think a lot of social media managers were like, man, I wish I could do that because I've dealt with some of this stuff all the time. And then a lot did. And it's not something that is easily done. It's very risky.
Yes.
And I don't think it's for everyone. I think a lot of people are getting tired of brands. Like,
Right.
it to me, like, it's kind of becoming like people's go-to tone of voice for brands. Like, oh, let's be snarky and edgy. And it's like, maybe you could do better, like being kind, like,
Try that.
take a look. It's this is not brand Twitter, but like an account like We Rate Dogs, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just brings so much joy to people, and
Right.
it's friendly. They've had a few clapbacks that were like they kind of poke fun, and it's friendly, but it's sometimes it's harder to be nice and than it is to be mean on social. Now, I'm not saying like you shouldn't, and like if there's like a chance to like, I'll tell you, I can talk about this. When I was working on Invincible for Amazon Prime Video,
Cool.
we announced season 2 is released from the brand account. So season 2 is picked up for season 2 and 3.
Love it.
And one of the first responses was like, source, and we replied, us, because we're the source, right? And the fans love that. They ate it up. And somebody actually screen capped it and shared it like 6 months later.
Right.
And it blew up. It got even more engagement than when we originally did it. And it's like, man, I love it when the fans are doing our job for us.
Yeah.
It also kind of gives us like, okay, it brings it back to the top of the news cycle a little bit for us.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that was we were never mean, but we were just honest. Like, yeah, we are. You're talking to the actual.
Well, and also like your strategy would have told you to do one thing. When you as a person engaging in the social media cocktail party, is like, you know what? Let me just kind of like answer this, as if I were a person,
Right.
And I think there's a lot of you can feel kind of constricted as a social media manager because you want to feel personable, but you don't want to be too loose. You want to be buttoned up and get the conversions and clicks, but you also kind of want to have fun. And I was just thinking about Steakums. Like that's another one of, social media manager dream accounts. Like, oh man, I would just love to talk about Nietzsche, or what, or global politics. Like Steakums just showed up and just was doing wild stuff. And then I looked into that and I was like, why is this account going off? On all these things that are not related to steak. Every once in a while, they'll say, plus we make great frozen steak sandwiches. But, here's the history of, capitalism, and I that's kind of gone away too. But I looked into that, and the person running that social media account was the son of the person running the ad agency for Steakums. So I was also like, oh, a little Nepo baby action here. You get to say whatever you want if daddy's, driving the car.
But they've also continued that. It's the same sort of thing with with Wendy's. Those clapbacks came from the social media manager at the time,
right?
Who then left. And it's the same with Steakum. And the brand said, we still want to keep that voice. And that's where it gets really tricky. And there was an article recently about like social media managers becoming the voice of the brand, where like a platform like TikTok, you need a face, right? For a long time, social media managers have been able to kind of hide behind the brand account. I'm speaking as the brand.
Right. Exactly right.
I'm Wendy's. I'm whatever. But like when you have to appear on camera and your company's not paying for on-camera talent, a lot of times the social media manager is that by default.
Yep.
And that can be really tough for. I mean, to me, it feels almost like the transition between like silent films and talkies, where it's like, if you're not good in front of a camera, social media managers might need to develop that skill. I don't think they have to. I think there are other. I don't think they should necessarily. But if you've got it, great. I mean, Duolingo is a perfect example of that.
Great example, yeah.
But also, it does like what happens when that person moves on. How do you maintain that voice? And that's something like I try to do with the accounts that I run. It's like, okay, I'm leaving documentation for like, what if I just want to take a day off, right? Like,
yeah.
Or go on vacation. I need to have documentation so whoever is writing for the brand, it sounds the same. It doesn't feel like it's someone different. And that's a challenge. I mean, it's not easy to do.
It's a huge challenge. And then let's real quickly, you talk about documentation and stuff. When it comes time for the monthly reports, are you running these meetings? Are you building your own decks? Are you, do you have dashboards that you work with? How do you collate all that stuff into a manageable spot? Because you're right. I want to take a day off. Here's where everything lives. Or I'm moving on to a new job. Here's the tone of voice stuff. Here's all the ways we report. Like, how do you kind of package those things and present them?
I right now, I am very fortunate to work for a company that has a data team that does all that for me.
Yeah.
And we have monthly meetings where the data team shows the social team all the data, and we kind of talk it out and interpret it and kind of make recommendations based upon the data. And it is incredibly valuable because that team understands data in a way that I feel like I understand it well, but these folks just take it to like another level. Not everybody can have that.
Yeah, you're so fancy, John.
I know. This is like a new thing for me, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I know, because it comes from decades of you just being the one who has to, bear the weight of all these things. So it must feel amazing to have sort of a neutral party help gather those things.
It's incredibly helpful. But before that, when it's just me, kind of team of one, mostly you can't do it all. So the important thing is to figure out, and it is very individualized to what your stakeholders want and understand. I am a holistic data person, as we mentioned. Like I want to see it all, but I know, like when I was in higher ed, like I know the VP of marketing at this university doesn't want to see all of this. There's a few key points that they really harp on and they really want to know. Or also, and we do this at Chaotic Good as well, of like, the data is important, but so is the context and actual story. So, we'll pull examples of, okay, here's a reply to a post that we got that we think we want to bring to your attention. Here's a listing of several, key posts that we think is important,
Right.
and to share. And in higher ed, that was very helpful because we had marketing people, but also it'll go up to somebody who's not a marketing person and saying, oh, okay, our engagement rate went up 20% this month, doesn't really mean much to them. But if I can show, hey, we found a tweet where somebody was choosing, I got accepted to school A and school B, I'm trying to decide which one to go to, and here's our school replying and the other school not. And I can share that with the university president or a VP of admissions and go, this has value.
Oh, yeah.
They understand that a lot better than our engagement rates up 20%. They know that's good. Up is always good, right? But
yeah, but I mean, if you're handing over those KPIs,
right,
and saying, impressions, interactions, clicks, shares, views, all those things, they don't quite know what those mean.
Especially when you're in a field that it's not click and buy a widget. Right. With like
service, kind of service thing.
Right. And I would always tell stakeholders at the universities I worked at, like, nobody decides to go to a university based on a tweet. Right. I can get people to the university. I can get them to like sign up for a campus tour. But if they come for that campus tour and the tour guide is awful, that's not going to do any good.
Right.
So, there are certain things I can measure. I can't tell you and quantify like how many people decided to enroll in our university because of, our Twitter efforts, but I can tell you a few other things here. And here's some solid examples I can give you. It's like, just give them something tangible that they can grasp is the important thing.
I love that. So well, you kind of shared a couple stories with us already, but can you give us like a couple examples of some Cinderella stories that you can share about a brand or a service or, a company that you were working with that really got social media? And then conversely, do you have any horror stories?
Okay. Oh,
how long do we have?
Those before I don't get myself in trouble on any of these, but in higher ed, for me, the Cinderella stories were the ones where you would. Higher ed is very different than any other thing, because I always felt it was interesting to me because there's a personal touch to it. Like, I could walk around campus and see, oh, there's Kitty Chan 73. She had problems with parking today. It doesn't know I'm the one reading those tweets, but also gives you kind of a rewarding feeling where if you've worked at a university for 4 years as a social media manager, you're going to see students come into the university with that post that says, I just got accepted to, Texas State. And then 4 years later, you're going to see that post of that same person that says, I just graduated.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is really cool. And that shows some success of like, they're sharing those experiences and you're a part of it. That you're in telling them congratulations. And to me, going into a university VP or president's office and showing them that and seeing on their face like a 60-something boomer suit and tie university president look at that and realize, oh, this is something special. That to me is really cool and really does prove the value of it.
Yeah.
But then horror stories, there are plenty of, but most of it comes like I've been through a lot of crisis comms and especially in higher ed. We had, from like day one, literally like possible shooting on campus, I've been through 2 floods, major flooding events. We had a cow get loose on campus. I got to tweet steer clear of the area. Again, having a team, a staff writer came up with that, not me, but I love that.
Oh.
And all sorts of student protest and things like that. And to me, the horror stories come when the powers that be decide to bury their heads in the sand. They don't want to pay attention to what people are saying on social media and just go revert back to PR tactics of pre-internet days of we're going to put out this statement and that's it. And we live in a time where you have to constantly inform people when those crises happen, whether it's a flood or it's a political protest on campus.
Right.
You need to show that you're listening and taking action and keeping people informed of what's going on. And I think the horror stories really do happen when people are like, no, I think we're not going to say anything and just wait till it blows over. And it's like, it's not going to. Like, I'm sorry.
Nope. And well, it's interesting to understand context. Is somebody, I'm just kind of like, thinking like ChatGPT can write all of our things. We'll just have an AI do all this. But context is key, and understanding and knowing how people want to hear information. You could have just said, cows loose, or whatever, but you get a chance to get a pun in there. It feels fun. It brings down the anxiety. I mean, there's so many kind of amazing responsibilities that can fall on a social media manager.
It's interesting that you brought up chat. Is it GP? I get my initial
GTP, whatever.
Well, AI in general.
There you go.
I was thinking about it this morning, and I think there's a lot of potential there, and there are many use cases for it.
Yeah,
but I am not afraid for my job because of AI. I think it'll change things. I'm a little nervous about it, but I keep seeing things of like, okay, this AI has written a song in the style of Nick Cave. This AI has made a piece of art in the style of, Michelangelo, whatever. It's all kind of in the style of, you've got a Beatles poster behind you, and AI is not going to become the next Beatles, right? It takes a human being to, you have to have in the style of something, right?
Right.
So like, it still takes a human being to create that next innovation. Like, yeah. I'm sure there will be AI creativity and art that's interesting and unique and whatever, but at the end of the day, there's still having a human on the other end is going to be important for quite some time. It's still not there, and I'm not sure it ever totally, like, you're not going to have AI Beatles.
No, absolutely. I absolutely agree. You could probably have AI Coldplay, but we're not going to get into it. No, but you bring up a good point. Is AI is good at pastiche, taking this and this and this and making that. But there are these hidden inferences where you could say maybe a bit of levity is something, that we can do, or, us ? It's like, where's the source for this information coming from? A little sarcasm, like, something that people can like laugh a little bit. Maybe you can bring down the seriousness, bring down the anxiety, bring up the levity. I mean, there's so many different faders that we can work on social media that there's just no way that a program that's based on previous data sets would be able to arrive at that point. I mean, you have to play like the Beatles. You have to play years worth of throwaway gigs in a German strip club to get to that, and is that, pay your dues, I mean, that's kind of where we're at. And a computer doesn't pay those things,
Exactly.
Well, I guess that wasn't a conversation. That was actually just me talking. So you've said so many amazing things. And once again, I'm going to plug you again on social because you're fantastic. You speak directly to the social media marketer and you're like, is this job silly? But also, is this job serious? Because you take it very seriously. And those are the inspiring, prompts that you kind of provide on social. Most recently, you're going off about Sesame Street and just how they keep their tone of voice together. And now you're working in entertainment, you come from education, you have all these different things. You've given us so many gems, but if you had to cook all of that down into a nice sauce, what would be your one piece of advice for the audience listening today about social media and marketing?
Oh man, there's so much, but like I think it does come to that. Like I am a fun and games person. I get to work on accounts that are a lot of times that are very silly and get to do some fun stuff. But
Amazing.
you have there's a quote from the designer Charles Eames. He says, take your pleasure seriously, and I think that goes with social as well. Like we can do fun things, we can do serious things, but we have to understand it and take it seriously as well. It's an interesting time. Like when I was freelancing last year, and I was working both on Invincible, which was a very fun, very silly, like lot meme heavy account. But also, one of my other clients was in the end of life space. It was a memorial forest where you purchase a tree and have your ashes buried around it. So going back and forth between the very meme heavy to a very serious tone, it's very hard. But like understanding that, you know, having that flexibility and being able to do both of those things is important.
Right.
And they require very different skill sets. So just constantly be perfecting and working on your craft of being a social media manager. I think is important because it's constantly changing. What worked one day is not going to work tomorrow. What worked on this account is not going to work on the next one. And understanding that constantly working to hone your craft is key to staying in this and being successful in the business.
And just another plug for social listening. It's like, what are the kids talking about? What are the memes? What are the, terms of, what are the kind of quirky little phrases that people say that you can incorporate into your post to be relatable? Like without that, kind of curiosity based presence on social media, you need to kind of incorporate that too, because what you said, what works for this other account might not work for this next one, but also it's 2023, and you're pulling out 2018 memes. Like, you're going to date yourself in a weird way, like you have to just make sure that you're listening too. I mean, would you say that?
It just comes back to like the amount of work social media managers have on them. It's not only is it all of the doing the creating the content, community management, data analysis, all of these things, but there's also a ton of professional development of staying on top of a field that changes almost by the hour.
Seriously.
You've got to work in that time to do it and not just perfect your craft, like maintain it.
And maintaining, just really quick, do you read a bunch? Are you on social just sort of like, as a, lurker, or like how do you kind of build your craft up?
I read constantly, but also and this is not for everybody. Like, do not take this as advice if you don't want to. But for me, my personal social media presence helps me be a better social media manager. Like the
Yeah.
habit and routine of being online and participating on social platforms. And I several years ago resolved I'm going to tweet about social media marketing at least once a day.
Mhm.
I've skipped days, but here and there. But for the most part, I try to do it every day. And that practice and understanding what works and writing and crafting posts with my own, where I have no limitations. Like it is, anything goes wrong, it's on me. Anything, it's not. I'm not representing a brand. I have free range to do it how I want to. Helps me become a better marketer for the brands I do work for. And I don't think that's for not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody's interested in doing that. But if you have an inkling of like, oh, hey, I put myself out there a little bit, the rewards are substantial and it can make you a better marketer.
And then really quick, before I get to this last question, how do you take a break from those things? It can cause a lot of anxiety. You're on your phone scrolling and stuff. Do you have a phones down approach, or how do you kind of balance your extremely online existence and profession with your offline life?
This sounds having a kid really helped doing that. You would think it would be the opposite, but uh, my 6-year-old doesn't care. Like he doesn't care that I've got a tweet going viral. He doesn't care that, he needs his dad
Yeah.
there for him,
Yeah.
and he needs me to pay attention to what he is doing.
Yeah.
And reminding myself of that constantly has helped me a lot. Like
Yeah.
I think I had a lot more cell phone addiction before he was born, and then it's kind of like, well, I can't do that now. And then also just like finding time, like going to the gym, reading for pleasure.
Yep.
And you'll find those things actually do help you in your work too. Like,
Right.
because I go to the gym, I feel better and I'm healthier. My mind is more active because I'm reading things that are not always social media related. I'm still making connections. My head is like, I'm reading fiction and like, okay, that helps me out in so many other regards. So finding those things that it's hard to do, because there are those times you just get that little cell phone itch, like, oh, I want to check it, but it's something, again, just like honing your craft, it's something you constantly have to stay on top of not because it's so easy to just not even think about it and just check Twitter.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's something I think every social media manager has to find their weekly escape.
Yeah. Yeah. And you make a good point, is that you won't escape. You'll still be kind of recording things and making notes, and so, but giving yourself space away makes you more engaged when you are there. So I love that, man. And but you don't talk this talk, you walk this walk. And it's so much fun following you online and seeing how high the engagements are, because there's so many people out there that are feeling what you're saying. And what's so nice is that you give yourself space to say what you want to say, and question things, and really help build social media management as a profession up. And so I just want to thank you so much for your time. But if people want to connect with you and learn more about you online, how can they do that, Jon?
I'm active on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'm at JS Stansel across all platforms. I'm active here and there, everywhere. So that's the best place to find me. You can listen to the Thought Feeder podcast that I co-host with my friend Joel Goodman. It's mostly about higher ed marketing, but I think it applies to marketing in general as well. So those are the two best places to find me.
Cheese or chocolate?
Are you ready to play?
Let's go.
Cheese or chocolate?
Chocolate.
Mm.
I'm lactose intolerant, so I would have said cheese like 5 years ago.
Another key piece of information, data that you have to gather. You're like, why does this cheese make me feel so bad? Okay, good. There might be milk and chocolate, but we'll skip over that. Okay, here we go. Underestimated or overestimated?
Overestimated.
Oh, explain that.
I was just in general. If there's nothing after the word, that's just my gut. I think sometimes people just tend to overestimate the value of things that don't have that value there. Maybe not social media, but other areas as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. This is a hard one. Batman or Superman?
Batman.
My dude.
I mean, I love Superman. Don't get me wrong. I've just reread the Death of Superman series and loved it. But I mean, I'm a gadget guy, like Batman.
Yep, I'm with you on that. Halloween or Christmas? Damn.
Oh, Halloween.
Really?
Yeah, it's much more fun. It's. I like the decorations better.
Yeah, and the decorations are going nuts nowadays. Like people are getting just as stoked for Halloween. Okay, you've answered correctly on all these, by the way. Walk slow or walk fast?
Walk fast. I'm a fast walker. See more things.
Yeah, get out of my way. And I see your guitars behind you, so this will be a nice closing question. Jimi Hendrix or Jimmy Page?
I'm going to say Page, only for the reason that he's not most famous for playing a Telecaster, but I'm not a Stratocaster person. I like both them equally, but as far as guitars go, I am a Telecaster player, and before he switched over to being more famous for playing a Les Paul, Jimmy Page played a Telecaster, and that's my guitar choice.
What Gets Measured is a NinjaCat podcast. Please rate and review the show wherever you find your podcasts. Share this episode on social, and visit us on the web at ninjacat.io.